This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, I have a rather unique guest on the phone, quite different than what I'm usually used to, and to me, different is great. I've had authors on here before, but this guy is cut from a different cloth. I'm talking about the author of The Saints and the Poets, Shun Lee Fong. How do you do, Shun? Do I just call you Shun or Shun Lee?
Shun Lee would be great. Yeah, it's great to be on the show with you. I appreciate it.
Yes, and of course, a special little shout out to Nancy McLoughlin of Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, for connecting us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had her on last year in celebration of that film's 35th anniversary, and she was one of 4 people from that film I've had on here, and she's been absolutely awesome ever since my first encounter with her, and still connected with her, and lovely, lovely woman. How did you come to meet her?
Oh, boy. I met Nancy just a few weeks ago, actually, and we've come to be really good friends. And she was a part of one of the programs of the Greenhouse, which we'll talk about in a minute, but the program was called the Creative Lab. And we audition actors and take the top 12 actors, and we audition writers and take the top 6 writers, and then we pair them up. And over the course of a month of coaching and collaboration and professional mentoring and all the things that we do at the Greenhouse, we create 6 short films, actually shoot them at the end of the month. And she was one of our actors back in April. So that's how I got to know her, and she has quickly become a huge fan and a friend, and I couldn't be more grateful for her.
Yeah, I love Nancy, and she's been very, very good to me, and she's been very encouraging. And I was wondering, I don't know if you've seen Jason Lives. Have you seen that film?
I haven't. I've not seen. I don't watch a whole lot of horror films, only because it's just not quite my genre. But I've known a lot of people that are involved in horror films, and just appreciate the effort that goes into making a film like that. It's such a unique genre that the people the work that they put into those is, I realize how much it is.
Yes. Well, Shun Lee, I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of your background and how you came. I know that you're part of a Christian organization, so I was wondering how you come, first off, how you came to accept Christianity or come to Jesus, and how that led to the Greenhouse.
Yeah. How far back do you want me to go? I mean, we could go all the way back to when I was a kid. I grew up in a very, very creative family. There's 8 kids in my family, 4 boys and 4 girls. My parents are both very creative people as well, and all the kids in my family were involved and are involved in music and in theater and drama, in photography and poetry and writing, you name it. Our family has been a part of that on one level or another. And so the creative gene was kind of in me. My dad just retired last year, actually. He was a math professor, but his true love was piano, was concert piano. And my mom was also a teacher for a number of years, but she's just amazingly good at writing and creativity and ideas, and she also played the clarinet and all sorts of stuff. So all that to say, there's a lot of creativity in my family, and I grew up in that environment where creativity was valued and was encouraged, and I consider that a real blessing, because not all families have that. and that's something that I've tried to run with and also instill in other people that I've gotten to know. In terms of my faith, my parents are both Christians. They were back then when I was a child as well. And so that's something that the environment that I grew up in. But in terms of my come to Jesus moment, like you so eloquently put it, that happened when I was pretty young. It was something that wasn't just kind of foisted upon me, but it was something that my parents, being good teachers and intellectuals, talked about with me, and we discussed it, and it was something that I made my own decision on. And then, of course, when you get into those high school years, everybody's got to have their running away from God moments. And I had my share of those, my version of those. And it wasn't until college where I started to really decide, it's time to make a choice. There's no halfway when it comes to faith. Either you believe it or you don't. And if you only half believe it, then you're just a hypocrite. And I knew that was not the kind of person I wanted to be. So at that point, through some friends and through a youth group that I was involved with in Omaha, Nebraska, where I'm from, that was the time I really began to very seriously say, hey, this is who I am, not only in terms of belief, but in terms of having a true relationship with God and listening to him and wanting to go about his will, whatever that may be, and coming to the point of saying, okay, God, I believe you're out there. I believe you created me with a purpose, and as such, I want to realize that purpose in my life, and you're the only one who can help me do that, because if I do it on my own, I will definitely screw it up.
Yeah. I actually was baptized in 1988. I'm going to be 45 this year, so
okay.
Yeah. So anyway, you got a book that Nancy McLoughlin had introduced me to called The Saint and the Poets, and of course it's part of the Greenhouse. Now, the Greenhouse, how did you come to form that?
Yeah, that's a good question. While I was still in Omaha, I actually was a lawyer. I was practicing law. I was doing a lot of intellectual property, so copyrights and trademarks. I was handling trial law, a lot of corporate stuff. And I don't know if you and your listeners know this, but lawyers are not that creative.
No.
So I had reached this point where I was just missing that creative side of who I was. And when lawyers start getting creative, they start getting disbarred, and I didn't want that for myself. But it reached this point where I was like, I've got to really tap into that creativity again. And but I realized that I didn't really have anybody to point me in the right direction. I had my mentors, I had spiritual mentors, creative mentors, but in terms of somebody saying, this is how you go about making a career and a lifestyle of creativity in the arts, I didn't really have anybody. And I recognized that there was just kind of a void in so many people's lives for that creative mentoring, that creative dialogue that helps point them in the right direction. And about halfway through my law career, I started really thinking about, okay, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? Thinking and praying about it and just saying, is this what I was created for? And about halfway through that career, I just decided, you know what, I don't believe this is it. I don't believe law is everything. I was good at it, but for me, it just wasn't very satisfying. I had started sneaking out at lunch to go do auditions for commercials and movies, and realizing that the partners in my firm probably weren't going to be terribly happy that I was doing that. So for me, I just needed to I needed to really explore that side of things. I got an agent there in Omaha and started just really throwing myself into the creative lifestyle again. And eventually decided, you know what, I'm young, I'm still single, I think it's time to go to L.A., the creative center of the world, really, at least when it comes to film and television. And so I moved out here in 2003, and the greenhouse started in 2007, just a few years later, with just a handful of people just meeting in the basement of a church, and just getting together to talk about what does it mean to be a creative person? What does it mean to be truly creative, not just on the creative side, but relationally and spiritually and financially, professionally, all the different aspects, trying to approach the creative lifestyle from a holistic approach, that everything that we do and everything that we are plays into our effectiveness as creative people, as creative professionals. And so we started just saying, hey, look, if you know anybody else who just wants to be a part of this conversation, invite them. They're more than welcome to come. Within a few weeks, we outgrew the basement of that church, and we ended up meeting in a place called the Shakespeare Club over in Pasadena.
Okay.
We quickly outgrew that, and we're now at CBS Studios in Studio City. They've been very gracious to allow us to come. And in that time, we've had about 7,000 people come through the greenhouse and our various programs. That's a good number. And actually, just Sunday, this last Sunday, we turned 10 years old. So we've been at this for 10 years, and I've just loved helping creative artists who come here to LA and elsewhere, because we get requests from all over the world for help on what does it mean to be creative. And you mentioned my book, The Saints and the Poets.
Yep.
A lot of that came out of the interactions of dealing with creative artists that were coming to LA, but also my own struggles as a creative artist, because it's not an easy thing to be a professional creative artist. And so The Saints and the Poets is a book of 52 articles and letters and just journal entries of my own, where I was wrestling with, what does it mean to be a creative person? What does it mean to be creative in a world that is begging you to conform or pressuring you to conform? How do we work around that? And so a lot of stuff on creativity, artistry, leadership, faith, etc.
How long did it take you to write that book?
That's the funny part. Actually, it took me 13 years because I didn't realize that I was writing a book at the time.
Okay.
Like I said, a lot of these were like journal entries and just letters to friends back at home, and sometimes they'd write me and ask me a question, or sometimes I'd hear from somebody overseas or from Florida or from Canada or wherever, and I would have to wrestle with those things to help them. And so what I did was take the best of everything that I had written and compiled it into this book. But from the moment I decided that I was going to write a book or turn it into a book, it took me a couple years just to get everything put together, and I released it at Thanksgiving of last year, so in November of last year.
Wow. Yeah, I know. Nancy called me last night, and I guess she's going to send one to me, and she's going to send one to another author that I'd interviewed as well. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's kind of her.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
She was quite adamant that I read this, so I said, sure, you know. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of both of you. Yeah.
Yep.
I enjoyed writing it. I enjoyed wrestling with those questions. I think that a lot of people who are not creative or who don't think they are creative, because one of the points in my book is that everybody is creative. Everybody has that in them in some fashion. When we talk about the fact that we as people were made in the image of God, well, we're saying that we're made in the image of the ultimate creator. Well, that means that we're creative too. So I think that one of the points of this book was really to drive home to people. It's like, hey, we're all creative. We all have something to learn from this. It may look different for each person, but we all have something inside of us that begs to let that creativity out. And I think, a lot of people who don't understand that or who haven't lived out that from that perspective, they may think that creativity, either on one hand, is they simplify it, oversimplify it, and make it less than what it is, or they go to the other side of the spectrum and they make it so out of this world that only the strangest and most bizarre people can actually figure out how it works. And what I found over, 15 years of being a professional creative artist is like, no, that's not how it is. We all have it. We all have it in us. And part of our figuring out who we are as people is to determine what was placed inside of us individually as creative people.
You had mentioned to me previously on the phone call that you was involved in the marketing or something of The Passion of the Christ?
Yeah, that was back when The Passion of the Christ came out, both times, because it got released to theaters in 2 consecutive years. One was the original, and then the next was the edited version. I got pulled in to help with the marketing department of Passion of the Christ, working there with Icon, and that's Mel Gibson's company, and had the opportunity to serve at least partially as a liaison between the company and what they were doing with the movie, and then also with churches around the country. Getting them to see what it was that Mel Gibson was trying to do, what his vision was for that movie.
You know what I found interesting with The Passion is that I hear all these Christians attacking R-rated films, and not only was The Passion of the Christ R-rated, but it was nearly rated X.
Yeah, I don't know about the whole rating system when it comes to The Passion of the Christ, but I think it was a watershed moment for Christian believers, many of whom for years had said, hey, Hollywood is turning out all this junk, and that was never my perspective. Sure, there are junky movies out there, but Hollywood puts out a lot of really, really amazing stuff that talks about the human condition, that talks about what it means to live in this world and the struggles and the joys and everything that goes with it. And I think, The Passion of the Christ really became kind of a wake-up call that maybe at least some people in the Christian community had been approaching the arts, and particularly Hollywood, from the wrong perspective. That it was less about the rating that got put on to a particular film and more about, what is this film saying? Is it true? Is it beautiful? Does it have a sense of goodness to it? Is there a sense of hope? Is there a sense of redemption? All of which are very much a part of the Christian faith. And I think a lot of people at that point, at the point of Passion of the Christ, began to shift the way that they viewed film away from this older style and into this newer perspective of, hey, no matter what it's rated, within reason, of course, but no matter what it's rated, it can say something really important that we as human beings need to hear. And I think The Passion of the Christ was one of those.
I enjoyed The Passion. In fact, I thought it was really cool to see a Christian film done so artistically, and of course got to hand a lot of that to Mel Gibson for being a terrific director. And I gotta say, did you work with him at all?
I didn't have the opportunity to work directly with him. Of course, we passed each other in the hallways there at his office, but I was more on the marketing side when he was more on the creative side. But of course, I would hear just the amazing stories that were coming out of the creative side of that movie, the making of that movie, with Jim Caviezel and Mel and other people, and just the amount of care they put into taking a story that had a lot of meaning for a lot of people and treating it with respect and doing it to the utmost of their abilities.
What other films have you worked on?
I do a lot of independent stuff. I'm starting to get into directing, especially as the greenhouse is dealing with this creative lab that I mentioned earlier in the program. Some of those are short films. I've been in the very first feature film I was in. I actually had the opportunity to play a lawyer. I figured I could pretty much nail that. That one,
typecasting.
City. Yeah, exactly. I knew the director and the producer of that film, and I think they tapped into me because I used to be a lawyer. Jeff Saxton is the name of the producer director, and he pulled me in on that a number of years ago, a good 12, 13 years ago, and have been doing all sorts of works ever since. Film, both feature film and short film, commercial work. I've done a little bit of television, nothing that you probably would have heard of, but smaller things in television. I've done a lot of voiceover work. I had the opportunity to play a number of characters from the most recent dramatization of the New International Version of the Bible, as well as a number of other things. I've also been a musician, so I get to do some recording every once in a while, all sorts of stuff. The nice thing about creativity is that you don't get stuck in one thing. You get to try things, you get to explore, you get to play, and that's something that I really encourage the people that come through the greenhouse to do. Is let's try something. Let's try something new.
Well, you know what? Here's one thing. One of the reasons I was happy that I had hooked up with Nancy, and reason she had connected with you, because I haven't been to church in years. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I find that there's way too many hunters in the church. And I'm one of these animals that don't like to be hunted. In fact, I get aggressive when I get hunted.
That's you're speaking a story that I think a lot of people have encountered, and it's unfortunate. And so the first thing I'll say is that I'd like to apologize to you.
You don't owe me an apology.
Well, I get that. I know it wasn't me who was standing in those shoes when those things happened, but I'd like to ask your forgiveness that those things happened to you and that it hurt so badly, because obviously it did. And if it had to happen to me, and believe me, things like that have happened to me, I would have been hurt too. And so I totally get where you're coming from. At the end of the day, there is only one thing that sets Christianity apart from all the religions that mankind has made. This is going to show you my theological stripes, of course. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that sets Christianity apart is grace.
Yeah.
And that's not the same thing as tolerance. Grace and tolerance are two different things.
Yeah.
Tolerance says, we don't care what you did. Doesn't matter. Everybody do what you want. Do what's right in your own eyes. That's tolerance. Grace is like, we're going to call wrongdoing, or if you want to use the theological term sin, you can. I try to avoid using any Christianese just because it may not be helpful to anybody. But at the end of the day, grace says we're still going to call sin, sin. We're still going to call wrongdoing, and, not but and, we know that there is a God who forgives. It reminds me of that story in the Bible of
the woman caught in adultery.
Caught in adultery and brought before Jesus. And in fact, this was in The Passion of the Christ, such a powerful moment.
Oh yeah, Monica Bellucci.
In that film. Yeah, exactly. And the fact that Jesus said, "Let he who has no sin cast the first stone." And I'll be the first one to tell you, that's not me. I would not have been able to cast a stone because I am not without sin. And I think the thing that is needed so much in the world right now, especially when it comes from artists who identify with the Christian faith, is because artists are truth tellers. They want to tell the truth even when that truth isn't very welcome.
Yeah.
The thing that I think that, and in that sense, it makes artists the modern day prophet. You know, the prophets of the Old Testament who would come and they would tell the truth to the king or to whoever needed to hear it, even if it meant that they might get killed in doing so. And I think artists are that way as well. We want to tell the truth. We want to speak beauty and truth to a world that is so hungry for it. And so one of the things I just really encourage artists to do is speak the truth at all times, but learn how to do it with grace.
What do you think of Canadian film?
Canadian film. You know, I'm not terribly familiar with Canadian film. I know there have been some really good ones that have come out, and I'll say even more so that there have been amazing Canadian actors who have become a part of the entertainment industry. And to the degree where I'm like, boy, let's all just pick up and move to Canada. There's just so much good stuff. Now, with that said, there's also a lot of film that is centered here in LA that is being shot up there because of some of the tax incentives, some of the things that are going on up there. I think that's just awesome. I think that's fantastic, and I think the creative culture that is being built in places like Vancouver and Toronto is just amazing, and I look forward to seeing more of that.
Do you know where I'm located here in New Brunswick?
Yeah.
Have you been up here?
I have, actually. I used to live in northern Maine. And so my family, when I was young, we would actually cross the border over into Canada and just drive all over Canada. It's just such a beautiful country that you have there. And all over. You know, we've been from the East Coast to the West Coast in Canada, and just find it inspiring and breathtaking at the same time.
Okay, I'm going to name some films. Have you seen Bon Cop, Bad Cop?
I haven't seen that, no. Is it worth seeing?
I think so, yeah. It's our highest grossing film here in Canada. Just spawned a sequel this year. It's it's actually a bilingual film, although I'm not bilingual. How about
neither am I. I speak a little bit of French, and that's about it. Just a very little.
How about the Trailer Park Boys?
That one I have heard of, but I haven't seen it. You know, I remember as a kid, because we got a lot of Canadian television where I lived. Mm-hmm. I remember watching a show, and I don't think I brought this up since I was a kid, but I remember watching a show called The Beachcombers. I remember. Way back in the day, The Beachcombers. And I always thought that was such an interesting perspective on life. It reminds me of some of the stuff that we're seeing now, like Manchester by the Sea, kind of that gritty, down-to-earth, this is what life is like in a blue-collar world. And I just remember that so clearly in my mind from watching that show as a kid.
We struggle to get films made here that are actually ours. Like, I understand films that get shot here, but they're American films, and that kind of annoys me.
Right.
Yeah.
That definitely is true. Although, wasn't the movie Room, wasn't that partially a Canadian film?
The Room?
No, not The Room, but Room, the one with Brie Larson.
I know what one you're talking about, yeah. Have you, just to get on a side note, have you seen The Room?
I've not. I've seen plenty of posters for it.
No, I have seen Room, and I was happy to see. I didn't know that was a Canadian film until the last year or so. Yeah, and just such an amazing film. So well acted, and it deserved every nomination that it got. What's coming up in the future for the Greenhouse? Tell me about some of the film projects, because I would like to encourage you guys to do the kind of creative films that I want to see?
Yeah, well, that is definitely a good question. We have a lot of different programs, and your listeners can check it out at greenhouseproductions.com. We have a real focus on mentoring. We want to make sure that there are 11,000 new actors who come to Los Angeles every year, and 12,000 new film school grads every year. That means they're all coming here, and the competition is very fierce, and everybody has a dream, and they're trying to follow that. And the thing that we try to do is to serve as, on one hand, a landing pad, but on the other hand, a launching pad for creative artists who come here, to make sure that they have the education that they need. We have a series called the Spotlight Workshops, which is providing a lot of professional level workshops so people can stay on top of what's happening in the industry. We have, for people who are new, we have Hollywood Connect, which is really about how the choices that have to be made as they're considering a move here, all the way through their first or second year. I've told you about the Creative Lab and the things we're doing there with the films that are coming out. We are trying to create an environment where failure is okay. It's okay to make mistakes as a creative person. And the thing that keeps creative people from truly reaching their potential is so many times it's this fear of making a mistake, and so it just paralyzes them. So we've tried to create this environment, much like Pixar has, where it's okay, go ahead and make mistakes, and then let's get up and let's talk about how it happened, why it happened, and how we can fix it so it doesn't happen again. So we have lots of projects that we're working on together. We're working on a web series right now. We do have a YouTube channel with some of the documentary type of stuff that we've created. So your listeners can go ahead and check that out. Our real focus when it comes to the greenhouse, no matter what faith background they come from, because we have all sorts of faith backgrounds at the greenhouse. It's not just for Christians. It just so happens that I'm a Christian. But we have atheists, we have Muslim, we have Jewish, we have all sorts of stuff, people who come through, and we love that. We think that's awesome because we're all in this together. We're all trying to figure out how to make great art together. But the thing that we really challenge all of the people who come through the greenhouse is to really focus on 4 different aspects of not just filmmaking and television making, but music and all the other arts that are involved at the greenhouse. And the first is truth. We want people to examine the truth, even when it's hard. We want people to learn how to utilize beauty, how to use that as a tool in their tool chest for making film, how to make something beautiful, not pretty, which is something different, not sentimental, which is vastly different, but truly beautiful, what makes something beautiful. Then we encourage people to really focus on excellence in their craft. We want them to be working hard to do the very best they can, not just for novelty's sake. You don't make a film just because it's something new that nobody's seen before. How can you truly become an excellent artist, a filmmaker, a television content maker, a musician? How can you become excellent at that? And then the final thing that we really focus on at the greenhouse is a sense of redemption, that the world is broken around us. You and I have been talking about it. The world is broken. People do stupid stuff. They hurt people. We see it in every facet of life, whether that's the church or in politics or anywhere else. And how can we begin to look at our society, a global society, and begin to say, yes, things are broken, and we can focus on the brokenness, or we can look for a way to fix it, to redeem it, to be what it was supposed to be. And so as we push the greenhouse artists to really focus on those, we're watching them as they begin to examine artistry from a different perspective. And to us, that's very exciting.
Are there any other, like we mentioned, of course, Nancy's done film work. Are there any other people in films that are associated with you in the greenhouse that are working with you folks?
We have a wonderful board of directors. I won't name them all, but people can go to our website and see our wonderful board of directors. They can see we've got an amazing team of volunteers, and if anybody is interested in getting involved, we'd welcome them to do that as well. They can also see on our website the large number of people that we've had come in to speak, either as instructors or I'll interview them at one of our events. We've had the director of Frozen, Chris Buck, come in. We've had
Frozen
Doug
was
Jones,
great.
Amazing movie, and just a turning point for Disney. We've had Doug Jones, who was in Hellboy and Pan's Labyrinth, and is now going to be in the new CBS Star Trek show that's coming up. All sorts of people who have come in from not just celebrities, but people who do hair and makeup. We have something to learn from them.
Yep.
People who are building sets, we have something to learn from them. All of the arts interact, and it's truly one of the most collaborative art forms there is. So we need to learn from the different people. It's not just about bringing the big names in. It's about, hey, how do we learn how to be effective? How do we learn the collaborative process of filmmaking? And so if people would like to see that list, it's way too long to even begin with here, but if they'd like to, they can go to our website, greenhouseproductions.com, and look up some of those.
Yeah. So you've done 10 years. Where do you foresee you in the next 10 years?
That's a really good question, because I'm asking myself the same question just about every day. When we started, we had no idea that it would be as successful as it is. And it just blossomed so quickly, it exploded. So we've always tried to put ourselves into a position where we're asking, well, what does the creative community need right now? And how can we provide that? Or how can we hook people up so if we can't provide it, that other people can? One of the things that we're looking to do is to create chapters of the Greenhouse across the United States, Canada, even overseas. We'd love to see a collaborative creative community in each of the main creative centers of North America and over into Europe and elsewhere as well. I know Hong Kong, they've talked to us about the need to have something like the Greenhouse in Hong Kong and other places. That's something we'd love to see happen. Now, of course, right now we're a nonprofit, which means that we're always out there fishing for donors who can make some of this vision happen, which is not always the easiest thing to do.
No.
But we're excited that we have ideas like that. We do want to be making feature films. We're going to be looking for investors and donors who would like to get behind the things that we hope to embody, the truth, beauty, redemption, and excellence that we were talking about, that want to get behind that kind of thing. Exactly like you're saying, the type of films you would like to see. We would love to see the Greenhouse be a community not only of the artists themselves, but other people who want to be involved in the process of creating great film, creating great television and music, and who would be willing to step up and instead of just griping about how bad everything is, they put their money where their mouth is, and they provide the means to make some of these films happen. So we'll be looking to do that in the near future as well.
Going back to The Passion of the Christ, have you ever had anybody from that film come in and speak, like Jim Caviezel or anybody like that?
We've not. I used to have the same manager as Jim Caviezel as an actor myself, and I always wanted to bring him in. At the point I was with that manager, I had not yet started the Greenhouse yet, so maybe I need to go back and touch base with her. I still know some of the people over at Icon, so it's definitely a possibility. I wouldn't rule anything out. Yeah.
And I also
absolutely.
And I also don't get this too, and I've had this argument with people that claim box office equals quality. Not necessarily.
We know that's not true. We know that's not true, and I won't name any particular films that have done very well in the box office where you just shake your head and think, Okay, that there was nothing to that. It was a mile wide and an inch deep.
Here's something funny. 1998. One of the highest grossing films was Armageddon. I was not a fan of that film. And I almost find people flock to stuff because of the advertisements tell them to see it. Yet there was a little movie that came out that year that I did go see, and I've seen it several times since, called The Big Lebowski. Now, The Big Lebowski was not one of the highest grossing films, but look at it today compared to Armageddon. It's got a huge...
The Coen brothers have truly made a name for themselves, and not just that film, but all sorts of films that they've done. Just amazing stuff, and they're very content to do it at a particular level, and so many times those are the ones that have staying power.
Another example, 2001 example. I was offended with Pearl Harbor. That was an example of a film that had me leave the theater angry. I hated that film with a passion because I felt that it concentrated on a love triangle as opposed to the war, and there was no three-dimensional Japanese characters in it. I hated that film, but it's funny because I went down to the Film Society, and stuff like that was making money. Went down to the Film Society at the university, and they were playing some real treasures like Mulholland Drive, Gosford Park, and Amelie, and I love films like that are so creative, and not just visually, but from the way they write, and they're not trying to manipulate people the way Pearl Harbor was. Yep,
absolutely. Well, there's what I have found, and I remember as a young musician, I was very much into my musical forms. And the thing that I remember an old radio DJ said to me as I was talking with him, he's like, because I remember downplaying a particular genre of music that I happened to not like at that time and have come to have much more appreciation for now, which was country music. And I remember as a young musician, I was very critical of it. And I remember him saying, you know what, Shun Lee, there are so many different audiences out there, and it just shows how broad artistry can be, that different people can like different things. And he really challenged me that it wasn't just about what I thought was good, but that art and the consumption of art, and whether that's film or music or theater or anything else, is collaborative as well. We can learn something from the audiences who like a genre that we may not have an appreciation for. And that's helped me to remain humble in terms of the art forms that I appreciate versus the ones that I don't.
Just out of curiosity, what are some of your favorite films?
Oh, boy. Everything from the commercial to the non-commercial. You mentioned Amelie. I loved Amelie. I thought that was a great film.
Oh, that was beautiful.
I am a big fan of World War II films, the study of human nature in the midst of ultimate conflict.
You know what my favorite war film is? I love Apocalypse Now.
And interestingly enough, and I am ashamed to say this as a film person, I've never seen it. I need to see it. It's in my queue for Netflix, so I need to get that watched. But for me, I loved Band of Brothers. I loved Saving Private Ryan. Just amazing stuff. The Great Escape, of course, was just a classic. I like just about every film genre out there. Not every single one, but I try to keep a very broad palette so that I can learn from each of the different styles and figure out what I like about it, what they're trying to say, and how they say it as filmmakers.
Anything else you wanted to plug?
Well, I appreciate you having me on here. It's been a pleasure, and I invite people to check out the Greenhouse. Again, the website is greenhouseproductions.com. I invite people to take a look at my book, which they can buy on Amazon, The Saints and the Poets. There is a workbook/journal for creative people that is going to be made available in the next few weeks as well, so they can check that out as well. And more than anything, if they have questions about artistry, if they have questions about how to get involved in the greenhouse and things that it's doing on a much larger level than just Los Angeles, they can feel free to get in touch with us through the website.
Well, I was talking to Nancy last night, though. She suggested that I issue the suicide/depression Doubtfire challenge towards you in the greenhouse.
I can tell you that's probably, and the thing that for me personally is that I actually deal with some people who are wrestling with that particular malady. You know, it's a terrible thing to have to go through. Most of the stuff that I do to draw awareness to it, I do on a private level, only because that's kind of my style. There might be other people that would be able to do that. So from more of the ice bucket challenge, I forget what the name of it was for you, the pie in the face challenge. Is that what it was?
After Robin Williams had unfortunately left us. Yeah. The Doubtfire challenge. I didn't start it, but I come aware of it, and I I love the fact that you're drawing awareness to it, because it's such an important issue, and as our world is so broken, we need people who are not only drawing attention to it, but being a part of the solution. And I applaud you on that. And I think back to the movie Silver Linings Playbook, where they were dealing with some of those issues, and they were doing it in a very honest way. Yeah. Okay. Well, before we close off, would you do a plug for my show?
All right, here we go. This is Shun Lee from the Greenhouse. You're listening to Python's Paradise with Greg Gilbert out of New Brunswick, Canada.